London, 1813. Miss Amelia Kendrick sat in her usual chair along the ballroom wall, observing the dance floor with practiced indifference. Tonight marked the 5th anniversary of her first season, and like every ball that had come before, she sat alone, clutching her dance card with its pristine, unmarked surface. Another successful evening of repelling the entirety of London society, she murmured to herself, smoothing the silk of her pale blue gown. Mother will be so pleased. Amelia's wry smile masked a profound conviction. Love was a dangerous indulgence, a path to ruin for sensible women. Her mother had loved unwisely and lost everything, her fortune, her reputation, and ultimately her life, leaving Amelia to be raised by a disapproving aunt who reminded her daily of her mother's folly. The lesson had been thoroughly absorbed, passion led to destruction, and Amelia was determined to avoid her mother's fate. "You are the daughter of a ruined woman," Aunt Prudence had reminded her before tonight's ball. "You must conduct yourself with impeccable propriety to overcome such a disadvantage. Better to remain unwed than to marry foolishly." Amelia's strategy for surviving each season was elegant in its simplicity. Appear at the required social events, maintain perfect decorum, and discourage all potential suitors with glacial politeness. She had perfected the art of the cutting remark disguised as pleasantry, the subtle snub that sent eager young men retreating before they could form dangerous attachments. Her aunt claimed to approve of this prudence while simultaneously lamenting Amelia's spinsterhood. "Your countenance is not unpleasing," Aunt Prudence would say, "though your chin is perhaps too determined for true beauty. If only you would smile more and speak less, some gentleman might overlook your mother's disgrace and your lack of fortune." Amelia had long ago decided she preferred her books, her small circle of equally unmarriageable friends, and the freedom of low expectations. She wanted nothing more than to eventually inherit her aunt's modest townhouse and live in peaceful solitude, away from the marriage market's endless machinations. The orchestra paused between sets, and Amelia caught her reflection in a gilded mirror across the room. At 23, she remained youthful, though the spark in her green eyes had dimmed with each passing season. Her auburn hair was fashionably arranged, her posture impeccable, the portrait of a proper lady, if a thoroughly overlooked one. She was reaching for her fan when the ballroom doors swung open. Conversation faltered as the Duke of Darkwell entered, his commanding presence casting an immediate pall over the festivities. Even the candles seemed to dim in deference to his notorious reputation. "The beast of Berkeley Square," whispered Mrs. Fitzwilliam to her daughter. "They say he drove his wife to an early grave." "Nonsense," countered Lady Harrington nearby. "The poor Duchess died in childbirth. Though I've heard he's sworn never to remarry after losing her and the babe." Amelia observed the Duke with detached curiosity. Benedict Darkwell stood a head taller than most gentlemen, his broad shoulders accentuated by impeccably tailored evening clothes. His face might have been handsome were it not for the perpetual shadow that seemed to linger there, a combination of a strong jaw often clenched in displeasure and eyes that surveyed the room with cold calculation. Society feared him not merely for his wealth or title, but for the cutting intelligence that saw through every social pretense. He was, Amelia decided, the perfect embodiment of why attachment was dangerous. A man of such power could destroy a woman's life on a whim. The Duke's sudden appearance at Lady Hammond's ball was itself remarkable. He rarely attended such functions, preferring the gentlemen's clubs or his country estate. Whatever had drawn him here tonight, Amelia was grateful for the distraction he provided. While the ton's attention was diverted, she could slip away early without comment. She was contemplating this escape when Lady Hammond intercepted her path, the Duke himself following in her wake. "Miss Kendrick, allow me to present His Grace, the Duke of Darkwell," Lady Hammond announced with barely concealed excitement. "Your Grace, Miss Amelia Kendrick." Amelia cursed perfectly, her face a mask of polite indifference. "Your Grace." The Duke's dark eyes assessed her with unsettling thoroughness. "Miss Kendrick." An uncomfortable silence fell between them as Lady Hammond hovered expectantly. When it became clear neither party intended to speak further, their hostess attempted to salvage the introduction. "Miss Kendrick is an accomplished pianist, Your Grace." Perhaps you might discuss your mutual appreciation for music. I harbor no particular fondness for music, the Duke stated flatly. And I play only to avoid conversation, Amelia replied without thinking. The Duke's eyebrow arched slightly, the only indication he had registered her impertinence. Lady Hammond's face flushed with mortification. I shall leave you to become acquainted, she stammered before retreating hastily. The Duke turned his penetrating gaze back to Amelia. You do not care for idle conversation, Miss Kendrick. I find most conversations at these affairs are remarkably similar, Your Grace. The weather, one's health, the quality of the refreshments, all discussed ad nauseum while both parties pretend profound interest. And what would you discuss instead? Amelia considered this unexpected question. Books, perhaps, ideas. Anything of substance. A flicker of something, surprise, crossed his face before the impassive mask returned. Most young ladies prefer lighter topics. I am not most young ladies, Your Grace. That, he said after a moment, is becoming apparent. The orchestra began the opening notes of a waltz. Amelia prepared herself for the Duke's departure, certain he had fulfilled whatever social obligation had prompted the introduction. Instead, he leaned closer and murmured words she had not heard directed at her in 5 years. Dance with me. It was not a request, but a command, delivered with such quiet authority that Amelia found herself placing her hand in his before fully processing the implications. As they took their positions, whispers erupted throughout the ballroom. The fearsome Duke of Darkwell dancing with the invisible Miss Kendrick, it was unprecedented. You realize, Amelia said as they began to move, you have just made me the subject of tomorrow's gossip. I am always the subject of gossip, he replied indifferently. Does it concern you? Not particularly. I have long been impervious to society's opinion. His hand at her waist guided her through a turn. Is that why you sit alone at every ball? Amelia faltered slightly. You've noticed me before tonight. I notice everything, Miss Kendrick, including that you maintain your solitude through choice rather than necessity. She looked up at him sharply. What gives you that impression? Your conversation, while remarkably direct, demonstrates intelligence and wit. Your appearance, while not adorned with excessive ornament, shows care and taste. You are neither awkward nor ill-favored. Therefore, your isolation is self-imposed. Amelia was unsettled by his accuracy. Perhaps I simply prefer my own company to that of fortune hunters and fools. A preference we share, he said, his voice dropping lower. Though tonight I find myself surprisingly diverted. The dance ended before she could respond. The Duke escorted her back to her chair, bowed formally, and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Amelia with the disturbing sensation that something fundamental had shifted in her carefully ordered existence. For 3 days following Lady Hammond's ball, Amelia convinced herself the Duke's attention had been a momentary aberration, perhaps even a subtle form of mockery. She was therefore unprepared to find him standing in her aunt's drawing-room when she descended for afternoon tea. Miss Kendrick, he greeted her, standing as she entered. I hope you will forgive the intrusion. Aunt Prudence hovered nearby, her face a mixture of terror and ecstasy at hosting a duke, particularly one of such notorious reputation. His Grace has brought you a book, she supplied helpfully. The Duke extended a small, leather-bound volume. You mentioned an interest in substantive topics. I thought you might appreciate this. Amelia accepted the offering, turning it in her hands. Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. She could not hide her astonishment. This is hardly standard drawing-room material, Your Grace. Is it not? I find her arguments logical, if somewhat idealistic. His expression remained unreadable. You disapprove of my selection. On the contrary, I own a copy, though I keep it hidden behind a false cover of sermons to spare my aunt's sensibilities. Amelia glanced at her aunt, who was pretending not to listen. I'm merely surprised a duke would present such a radical text to an unmarried lady. I did not take you for a conventional lady, Miss Kendrick. And I did not take you for a reformist duke. The barest hint of a smile touched his lips. Perhaps we both defy easy categorization. Aunt Prudence, unable to contain herself, interjected, "Would your Grace care to stay for tea? We have just received a new blend from India." "Thank you, but I have another engagement." He turned back to Amelia. "I shall call again tomorrow, if I may. There is a matter I wish to discuss with you." After he departed, Aunt Prudence collapsed onto the sofa. "The Duke of Darkwell, in our drawing room, bringing you books. What can it mean, Amelia?" "I'm sure I don't know," Amelia replied, though a sense of foreboding had settled in her stomach. "Perhaps he is simply bored and finds me a novelty." "Nonsense. A duke does not call upon a lady without purpose." Her aunt's eyes gleamed with sudden calculation. "He is unmarried, wealthy beyond imagining, if he has singled you out." "Aunt, please, do not construct a romance where none exists. The Duke has a reputation for coldness and cruelty. If he has some interest in me, it cannot be matrimonial. You are 23, Amelia, with no prospects and little dowry. If the Duke offers you any position at all, you would be foolish to refuse." Amelia's fingers tightened around Wollstonecraft's book. "I will not become any man's mistress, not even a duke's." "Better a duke's mistress than a forgotten spinster," her aunt muttered, though she quickly amended, "but of course we must hope for a proper offer." That night Amelia lay awake, contemplating the Duke's unexpected attention. Unlike her aunt, she harbored no illusions about his intentions. Men of his station did not marry penniless daughters of disgraced women. Whatever game he played, she would be wise to extricate herself before it progressed further. Yet when he called the following afternoon, she found herself eager for his arrival. "You seem troubled, Miss Kendrick," the Duke observed after they had exchanged pleasantries. "Has my gift caused you discomfort?" "Not the gift, Your Grace, but its implications." Amelia met his gaze directly. "I must ask your intentions in seeking my acquaintance." "I am neither wealthy nor well-connected, and you are not known for charitable social calls." Rather than offense, his expression showed something like approval. Refreshingly direct. "Very well, Miss Kendrick, I shall match your candor. I require a wife, and you have qualities that would suit my particular needs." Amelia blinked in astonishment. "You cannot be serious." "I rarely jest, particularly about matters of consequence." "But you don't know me. We've exchanged perhaps 50 words total. I know you are intelligent, observant, and uninterested in society's frivolities. You value substance over appearance. You have survived 5 seasons without succumbing to the pressure to make an advantageous match, suggesting both principle and fortitude." He paused. "Most importantly, you harbor no romantic illusions about marriage." Amelia stared at him, speechless for perhaps the first time in her adult life. "I offer a straightforward arrangement," he continued. "As my Duchess, you would have wealth, security, and considerable freedom to pursue your interests. In return, I require a capable partner to manage my households and eventually provide an heir. Our union would be a practical partnership, unburdened by emotional complications." "You're proposing a marriage of convenience," Amelia finally managed. "Precisely. Emotion leads to disappointment and irrational behavior. I believe we are both too sensible for such entanglements." Amelia's mind raced. The Duke's offer aligned perfectly with her own philosophy, marriage as a practical arrangement rather than a romantic union. It would secure her future, free her from dependence on her aunt, and provide opportunities she could never access otherwise. Yet something in her rebelled at the coldness of his proposal, the clinical assessment of her suitability. "Why me?" she asked. "Surely dozens of ladies with better connections and larger dowries would accept such an offer." "Those ladies want love, or at least the pretense of it. They would eventually grow resentful when I failed to provide such sentiment." His eyes, usually so guarded, revealed a flash of past pain. "I have no wish to repeat the mistakes of my first marriage. So I am selected for my lack of romantic expectations." The irony was not lost on Amelia. How flattering. "It was meant as a compliment to your pragmatism." He frowned slightly. "You need not answer immediately. Consider my proposal for 1 week. If you accept, we will announce our engagement at Lady Westmoreland's ball next Friday." After his departure, Amelia paced her bedroom, the Duke's offer repeating in her mind. Marriage to one of England's wealthiest, most powerful men, a dream for most ladies, yet based entirely on cold calculation. No love, no affection, merely mutual benefit. Isn't that exactly what you've always believed marriage should be? Her inner voice challenged, protection against passion's destructive force. She wrote to her closest friend, Sophia Thornfield, requesting urgent counsel. Sophia had married a kind but unexciting baronet the previous year and might provide the perspective of a sensible wife. Sophia's response arrived the next morning. A loveless marriage to the Duke of Darkwell would be like wintering in Siberia, grand perhaps, but ultimately frozen. Even my dear Harold, dull as he can be, warms my heart. Can you truly contemplate a lifetime without tenderness? Amelia dismissed the letter as romantic nonsense. She had never sought tenderness. Safety and security were far more valuable commodities. Yet as the Duke called daily, ostensibly to discuss literature and estate management, though clearly to assess her further suitability, Amelia found herself noticing disquieting details. The way his voice softened when mentioning his late mother, how his eyes betrayed amusement at her sharper observations, the careful way he listened to her opinions without interruption. On their fourth consecutive meeting, as they debated the merits of different estate management approaches, Amelia realized they had been conversing for nearly 2 hours without pause. "You are remarkably knowledgeable about agricultural improvements," he noted. "Most ladies consider such topics beneath their notice. My father's estate, before his death and my mother's subsequent difficulties, was known for innovative farming methods. I used to follow him on his rounds. The memory, long suppressed, emerged unexpectedly. He would explain each experiment, treating me as though I were his steward rather than his daughter." The Duke studied her face. "You loved him." "Very much," she admitted, "though his death when I was 8 left my mother vulnerable to unfortunate influences." "The scandal that still shadows your name," he said quietly. "Your mother's elopement with her music teacher." Amelia tensed. "You've investigated my family history." "I make it my business to know everything about matters of importance." His expression softened fractionally. Her choice was imprudent but born of genuine feeling. Some might consider that admirable. "Admirable," Amelia's voice sharpened. She abandoned her responsibilities, her reputation, her daughter, all for fleeting passion that left her destitute and eventually dead from consumption in a Lisbon boarding house. And this formed your opinion of romantic attachment. It demonstrated the danger of allowing emotion to override reason. "A lesson I have taken to heart," she met his gaze directly, "as you appear to have done yourself." Something shuddered in his expression. "My circumstances were different." "Were they?" "Society whispers you never recovered from your wife's death." "Society knows nothing of the matter." His voice turned cold. "My first marriage taught me that romantic notions lead only to misery. The Duchess and I were ill-suited from the beginning, a fact obscured by initial infatuation. Her death in childbirth was tragic, but our marriage was already failing." "Then we are agreed," Amelia said quietly. "Love is a luxury neither of us requires." "Precisely why I believe we would suit." He rose to leave. "I shall await your answer at week's end." As he bowed over her hand, their eyes met, and Amelia felt an unexpected jolt of awareness. The Duke appeared momentarily disconcerted as well, releasing her hand more quickly than necessary. That night, Amelia dreamed of a vast, empty house where her footsteps echoed endlessly through magnificent, soulless rooms. By the night of Lady Westmoreland's ball, Amelia had nearly convinced herself to accept the Duke's proposal. The advantages were undeniable, the drawbacks, primarily his formidable personality and society's fear of him, manageable. If she felt occasional misgivings, they were merely the natural hesitation before any significant life change. She dressed with unusual care, selecting a gown of deep emerald silk that complemented her complexion. Aunt Prudence, sensing the importance of the evening, had insisted on styling her hair with her best pearl combs. "The Duke will announce your engagement tonight," her aunt said confidently as their carriage approached the Westmoreland mansion. "I can feel it in my bones." "I haven't yet given him my answer," Amelia reminded her. "But you will accept," her aunt insisted. "Only a fool would refuse such an opportunity, and whatever your faults, you are no fool." The ballroom was crowded with London's elite, the atmosphere charged with the usual combination of ambition, envy, and calculation, thinly disguised as pleasure. Amelia immediately noticed the Duke's absence, which both relieved and disappointed her. She took her customary seat along the wall, though tonight it felt different. For the first time in 5 years, she found herself watching the door, anticipating someone's arrival. An hour passed with no sign of the Duke. Whispers began circulating. He had been seen at White's earlier, engaged in intense conversation with Lord Rowley. Perhaps he would not attend at all. Amelia told herself his absence was irrelevant. She had not yet committed to his proposal. His failure to appear simply gave her more time to consider. It was therefore all the more disorienting when Lady Westmoreland approached, accompanied by a strikingly beautiful blonde woman. "Miss Kendrick, may I present Lady Rowley? She has expressed a particular desire to make your acquaintance." Lady Rowley, resplendent in pale pink silk that set off her perfect complexion, assessed Amelia with cool blue eyes. "Miss Kendrick, how delightful to meet you at last. I understand you've been keeping the Duke of Darkwell quite entertained this past week." Something in her tone raised Amelia's defences. "His Grace and I share certain literary interests, Lady Rowley, hardly entertainment." How charmingly modest. Lady Rowley's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Benedict has always appreciated intelligent conversation. During our betrothal, we spent hours discussing everything from politics to philosophy." Amelia felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her feet. "Your betrothal?" "Oh, forgive me." Lady Rowley pressed a gloved hand to her lips in mock distress. "I forget the news is not yet common knowledge. The Duke and I have reconciled our previous differences. The announcement will appear in tomorrow's papers." "I was unaware His Grace had prior attachments," Amelia managed, her voice remarkably steady despite the sudden hollowness in her chest. "We were engaged before his first marriage," Lady Rowley explained with practiced nonchalance. "Family objections separated us, but now, as a widow, I am free to follow my heart. And Benedict has finally realized where his true happiness lies." Before Amelia could respond, the ballroom doors opened and the Duke himself entered. His eyes scanned the room until they found her, his expression inscrutable as he noted Lady Rowley at her side. "If you'll excuse me," Amelia said, rising swiftly, "I find I need some air." She made her way to the terrace, her composure threatening to crack with each step. The cool night air provided little relief from the burning humiliation that swept through her. He had been negotiating their practical, emotionless marriage while simultaneously reconciling with a former fiancé. The absurdity of it, the perfect confirmation of everything she believed about men's duplicity, would have been laughable if it weren't so painful. And it was painful, surprisingly, devastatingly painful. "Miss Kendrick." She didn't turn at the sound of the Duke's voice. "Your Grace, shouldn't you be attending to Lady Rowley?" "I understand congratulations are in order. Isabella has a talent for manufacturing circumstances to suit her purposes." He moved beside her at the balustrade. "We are not engaged." "A simple misunderstanding, then." "How convenient." Amelia kept her gaze fixed on the garden below. "It hardly matters. I had already decided to decline your offer." "Had you?" His voice betrayed no emotion. "May I ask why?" "It occurs to me that while I may not desire love, I do require honesty, something apparently in short supply." "You believe I've been dishonest?" "You neglected to mention your prior engagement to Lady Rowley or your current reconciliation with her." "Because neither exists." His tone hardened. "Isabella and I were briefly betrothed 7 years ago, before I met my wife. The arrangement dissolved when her father lost his fortune gambling. She married Lord Rowley for his wealth, and I married the daughter of my father's friend to fulfill family obligation." Amelia finally turned to face him. And now? Now Isabella is a wealthy widow seeking her next advantage. When she learned of my interest in you, she contrived this fiction to sabotage it. She has always excelled at manipulation. Why would she care who you marry? Because a duchess outranks a mere baroness, and Isabella cannot abide being outranked. His mouth curved in a humorless smile. Also, she believes she can control me through our shared history. Amelia studied his face, searching for deception. I don't know what to believe. Believe what you observe, not what you hear. He stepped closer. Has my behavior toward you suggested duplicity? No, she admitted reluctantly. But neither has it suggested any genuine regard. Our entire acquaintance has been predicated on mutual advantage. Is that so terrible? To recognize in another a complementary mind and purpose. No, but, she broke off, struggling to articulate the unease that had been growing within her. I agreed with your assessment that emotional entanglements lead to disaster. My mother's example taught me the danger of passion. Yet, he prompted when she faltered, yet I find myself questioning whether absence of feeling is truly preferable to its excess. She looked up at him, vulnerability breaking through her careful facade. I fear both the presence and absence of emotion, Your Grace. What kind of marriage could be built on such contradiction? The Duke was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its usual commanding edge. Perhaps we have both oversimplified the matter. There may exist a middle path between cold calculation and destructive passion. And what would that look like, exactly? I don't know, he admitted, surprising her with his candor. My first marriage began with infatuation that quickly soured to resentment. The Duchess expected romantic gestures I couldn't provide. I expected a partner who understood duty. We both were disappointed. And with me, you sought the opposite extreme, a marriage entirely devoid of emotional expectation. I thought it safer, his gaze held hers. But these past days in your company have suggested another possibility. Which is that perhaps compatibility need not exclude affection. That respect and understanding might naturally evolve into something warmer, without the dangerous extremes of either blind passion or complete detachment. Amelia felt her carefully constructed worldview beginning to shift. You're suggesting a marriage that includes feelings. Controlled ones, he clarified, based on genuine regard rather than transient infatuation. I'm not certain such moderation is possible, Amelia said softly. Hearts don't obey rational boundaries. Perhaps not, he reached out hesitantly and took her hand, but I find myself willing to risk finding out. The warmth of his touch sent an unexpected shiver through her. This contradicts everything you proposed initially. Yes, his thumb brushed across her knuckles. Consider it an amended offer. Based on what? Based on the realization that in attempting to avoid my first wife's romantic excesses, I nearly recreated the mistake in reverse. His expression softened. And on the discovery that I enjoy your company far more than is strictly practical. A flush spread across Amelia's cheeks. That hardly constitutes a foundation for marriage. It constitutes a beginning, he stepped closer. The question is whether you're willing to explore where it might lead. Before she could respond, the terrace doors opened, and Lady Rowley emerged, her face a picture of calculated distress. Benedict, darling, I've been looking everywhere for you. She froze in apparent shock at the sight of his hand holding Amelia's. Oh, I do beg your pardon, I had no idea you were engaged. The Duke's expression hardened. Lady Rowley, your timing is suspiciously impeccable, as always. I merely wished to remind you of our dance. She extended her hand expectantly. The first waltz is beginning. Amelia withdrew her hand from the Duke's grasp. You should go, Your Grace. One mustn't disappoint a lady. His eyes remained fixed on hers. Is that what you wish? She hesitated, torn between her instinctive retreat from conflict and an unfamiliar desire to stake her claim. Before she could decide, Lady Rowley interjected. Really, Benedict, Miss Kendrick understands. Prior commitments must be honored. She cast a dismissive glance at Amelia, especially when more recent diversions have served their purpose. The casual cruelty of the remark struck Amelia like a physical blow. Was that how the Tun viewed her, a temporary amusement for a bored duke? "Excuse me," she said quietly, moving toward the doors. "I should return to my aunt." The duke caught her arm. "Amelia, wait." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the intimacy of it stopped her. "Lady Rowley," he said without looking away from Amelia, "we have no dance engagement. In fact, we have no engagements of any kind, nor will we ever. I would appreciate your leaving us." "You cannot be serious," Lady Rowley sputtered. "This nobody, this daughter of a scandalous, ruined—" "Enough," the Duke's voice cut like steel. "You will not speak of Miss Kendrick in such terms, not if you wish to maintain your welcome in society." Lady Rowley blanched. "You wouldn't dare ostracize me." "Try me." His gaze remained fixed on Amelia. "Now leave us." After Lady Rowley's furious departure, silence fell between them. Amelia found herself trembling slightly, overwhelmed by the evening's emotional turbulence. "I apologize for her behavior," the Duke said quietly. "No need," she merely expressed what everyone thinks. "I don't care what everyone thinks." He stepped closer. "I care what you think." "I think," Amelia said carefully, "that I no longer know what to think. Everything I believed about marriage, about emotion, about you, it's all become rather confused. Then perhaps we should simplify matters." He took her hand again. "Dance with me." The echo of his first words to her a week ago was not lost on Amelia. Then it had been a command. Now, despite the similar phrasing, it was unmistakably a request. "To what end?" she asked, though she allowed him to lead her toward the ballroom. "To demonstrate that some risks are worth taking." His eyes held hers as they took their positions for the waltz, and to give the gossips something substantive to discuss. As they moved through the first steps, Amelia became acutely aware of every eye in the room upon them. The Duke's public attention had transformed her from invisible wallflower to the focal point of society's scrutiny. "They're all watching," she murmured. "Let them." His hand at her waist guided her through a turn. "For 5 years you've sat alone. Tonight you're dancing with me. By tomorrow they'll be speculating about our relationship. And what should I tell them when they ask?" "Tell them the truth." His eyes softened. "That we are discovering compatibility extends beyond practical considerations." "Is that what we're doing?" She couldn't quite keep the vulnerability from her voice. "I believe so." He drew her slightly closer than propriety strictly allowed. "I entered this week, seeking a convenient wife, and found myself increasingly captivated by an unconventional woman." "Captivated seems a rather emotional word for a man who eschews sentiment," she observed, though her pulse quickened at his admission. "Perhaps I've been reconsidering my position." The corner of his mouth lifted. "You've proven quite persuasive without saying a word on the subject." "I've done nothing to persuade you of anything." "On the contrary," his voice lowered. "You've challenged my assumptions, matched my intellect, and awakened interests I thought long dormant, all while maintaining you have no desire for emotional entanglement." "I don't," she insisted, though with less conviction than before. "Don't you?" His gaze was disconcertingly perceptive. "Then why did Lady Rowley's interference distress you? Why does the thought of my dancing with another woman trouble you? Those are not the reactions of someone truly indifferent." Amelia faltered in her steps, the truth of his observation striking home. "The waltz is ending," he murmured. "Come with me to the library. We need to talk privately." The Westmoreland Library offered blessed seclusion from the ballroom's curious eyes. Once the door closed behind them, Amelia moved to the window, needing distance to collect her scattered thoughts. "You're right," she admitted finally. "I was upset at the thought of you with Lady Rowley. That suggests an attachment I never intended to form." "Is that so terrible?" "It's dangerous." She turned to face him. "My entire life has been structured around avoiding my mother's fate, loving unwisely, and destroying herself in the process. And my life has been structured around avoiding my father's, trapped in a loveless marriage, seeking connection through a string of mistresses who cared only for his wealth. He moved toward her slowly. Perhaps we've both been fighting the wrong battles. What do you mean? I mean that in trying to avoid one extreme, we've embraced another equally destructive. Complete emotional detachment is as damaging as unchecked passion. Amelia felt something shift inside her, a crack in the protective wall she'd built around her heart. I don't know how to navigate the middle ground. I only know how to keep everyone at a distance. As do I, he stopped before her, but I find myself wanting to learn with you. Because I'm practical, sensible, unlikely to make emotional demands. Because beneath your practical exterior beats a heart capable of great feeling, carefully guarded but nonetheless real. His hand rose to touch her cheek. I recognize it because I've spent years doing the same. The gentle touch unraveled something in Amelia, a tight knot of fear and loneliness she'd carried for so long she'd forgotten it wasn't part of her natural state. What are you proposing now? She whispered. Another practical arrangement with occasional moments of affection. I'm proposing we explore this connection between us, whatever it may be. His voice deepened. I still want you as my Duchess, but no longer merely for practical reasons. And if I still fear emotional entanglement, then we proceed at your pace. His thumb brushed her lower lip. Though I suspect you're braver than you believe. The kiss, when it came, was gentle, tentative even, as though the fearsome Duke was as uncertain in this territory as she. Amelia found herself responding with a warmth that surprised them both, her hands rising to rest against his chest. When they parted, she looked up at him in wonder. This complicates matters considerably. A rare smile transformed his face. Some complications are worth embracing. Are they? She searched his eyes. What if this feeling fades? What if we discover we've mistaken momentary attraction for something more substantial? Then we will face that challenge together as we would any other. He took her hands in his. I'm not promising eternal passion, Amelia. I'm offering partnership, respect, and the willingness to build something that includes affection. Perhaps even love, though neither of us is quite ready to name it such. You make it sound so reasonable, she said with a shaky laugh. I am, at heart, a reasonable man, with one notable exception. He raised her hand to his lips. I find myself quite unreasonably drawn to a woman who has spent 5 years ensuring no one noticed her. Perhaps I was waiting for someone worth being noticed by, she admitted softly. The Duke Benedict, she corrected mentally, drew her closer. Marry me, Amelia, not because it's practical, though it is. Not because it's advantageous, though that's also true. Marry me because together we might find a balance neither of us could achieve alone. In that moment, Amelia realized her mother's mistake had not been loving too deeply, but choosing unwisely, selecting a man who offered passion without substance, excitement without security. Benedict offered both substance and security, with the possibility of genuine feeling developing within those safe boundaries. Yes, she said finally, I will marry you. Though I warn you, I may prove more emotional than initially advertised. His laugh, rich and unexpected, filled the library, and I may prove less cold than my reputation suggests. We shall disappoint society's expectations together. When they returned to the ballroom, Amelia's hand resting on the Duke's arm, the whispers erupted immediately. But for the first time in 5 years, she didn't care what was being said about her. Lady Rowley intercepted them near the refreshment table, her composure restored. Benedict, darling, surely this little interlude has run its course. Miss Kendrick must be returned to her chair before people begin to talk. Let them talk, he replied calmly. In fact, I intend to give them something substantive to discuss. He turned to Amelia with a questioning look, and at her slight nod, addressed the nearby guests in a voice that carried. I am pleased to announce that Miss Kendrick has done me the honor of accepting my proposal of marriage. The ballroom fell silent before erupting in a cacophony of exclamations. Aunt Prudence nearly fainted into the arms of a startled footman. Lady Rowley's face drained of color before she stalked away without another word. Subtle, Amelia murmured, though she couldn't suppress a smile. I've never seen the appeal of subtlety. He gazed down at her, his eyes warm with promise, not when certainty is so much more satisfying. 6 months later, Amelia stood in the ballroom of Darkwell Manor, surveying the gathering of society's elite who had travelled to Derbyshire to celebrate the Duke's birthday. As hostess, she had arranged everything to perfection, from the lavish decorations to the exceptional orchestra. "You've transformed this place," Benedict said, appearing at her side. "When I brought you here after our wedding, it was little more than a mausoleum." "It needed light," Amelia replied, leaning slightly against his arm, "and perhaps a touch of chaos." He laughed, a sound that no longer surprised those who knew him well. "You've certainly provided both." Their marriage had indeed proven more emotionally complex than either had initially envisioned. There had been adjustments, his tendency toward autocratic decision-making clashing with her independent spirit. Her habit of retreat when feelings grew too intense, frustrating his newfound desire for openness. Yet each challenge had ultimately deepened their connection rather than weakening it. "Lady Hammond is signaling that it's time for the first dance," Amelia noted. "Shall we demonstrate that the fearsome Duke of Darkwell remains captivated by his Duchess?" "With pleasure," he offered his arm. "Though I believe the Tun has revised its opinion of my fearsomeness. I overheard Lord Pemberley referring to me as positively genial last week." "How disappointing for your reputation," she teased, as they took their positions for the waltz. A small price to pay. His hand settled at her waist with familiar warmth, though I confess I maintain a certain useful intimidation in business matters. As they moved across the floor, Amelia reflected on how much had changed in a year. From the woman who sat alone at every ball to the Duchess of Darkwell, respected for her intelligence and admired for the remarkable transformation of her formerly forbidding husband. "What are you thinking?" Benedict asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "That we were both wrong," she replied. "You believed marriage must be either coldly practical or disastrously passionate. I believed emotional connection inevitably led to ruin. Neither was true." Indeed, his eyes softened as they had increasingly done in recent months, though I maintain we were right about one thing. "What's that?" "That we would suit," his voice lowered for her ears alone. Though in ways neither of us anticipated. The music drew to a close, but Benedict kept her hand in his. "I have something for you," he said, leading her toward the terrace. Away from the crowd, he withdrew a small velvet box from his pocket. "What's this?" Amelia asked as he placed it in her palm. "You've already given me more jewels than I could wear in a lifetime." "This is different." Inside lay a delicate gold locket. When she opened it, she found not the expected miniature portrait but a pressed flower, a forget-me-not. "From the garden at your aunt's house," he explained, "the first day I called on you. You were wearing a blue dress that matched them exactly." Amelia looked up in surprise. "You noticed such a detail." "I noticed everything about you, even then." His voice grew serious. "Though I pretended my interest was purely practical, some part of me recognized what I was not yet ready to acknowledge." "And what was that?" she asked softly. "That you were awakening feelings I had determined never to experience again." He took her hands in his. "That in seeking a marriage of convenience, I had somehow found something far more precious." "Love," the word still came hesitantly to her lips, though it had gradually become part of their private vocabulary. "Yes," he said it simply, without qualification or reserve. "I love you, Amelia, not practically or conveniently or reasonably, just completely." Tears pricked at Amelia's eyes. How alarming. "Whatever shall we do about such an irrational development?" His smile, the one reserved only for her, warmed his entire face. "Embrace it, I think. As we have embraced all the unexpected turns in our journey." As he drew her into his arms, Amelia reflected that 5 years of sitting alone had been worth the wait if it led to this. A love built on mutual respect and understanding, neither coldly detached nor blindly passionate, but something far stronger. A choice made daily to see and be seen by the one person who truly understood, "We should return to our guests," she murmured against his shoulder. In a moment, he tilted her face up to his. "First, I believe the Duke of Darkwell would like to kiss his Duchess beneath the stars." "How scandalous," she teased, even as she raised her lips to his. "Whatever will society say?" "Let them talk," he whispered. "We have far more important matters to attend to." And as they shared a kiss that was neither practical nor convenient, but entirely, wonderfully right, Amelia knew that sometimes the most fearsome things in life were worth embracing after all.